Welcome to AromaticChat, the podcast that introduces you to registered, clinical, and certified aromatherapists around the world. Every other week, my bestest friend, partner in crime, and business partner sits down with a different aromatherapist to learn about their aromatic journey and how they use aromatherapy in their lives and businesses. AromaticChat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching. Your host is Melissa, Master Transformational Coach and registered aromatherapist.
Hey friends, welcome to podcast episode number 93, Aromatic Chat with Jacqueline Higgins. Jacqueline is a nurse practitioner, aromatherapist, and is pursuing an MS in medical cannabis therapeutics. She has practiced in a variety of clinical settings and has incorporated plant approaches where deemed appropriate. Jacqueline notes the endocannabinoid system is fundamental to human health and has been underrepresented in healthcare. She is driven to support professionals in this rapidly changing space. Jacqueline is a member of the American Cannabis Nurse Association. I am so excited that I get to sit down with Jacqueline and that you get to listen in. So let's get started. Jacqueline, I am so beside myself that you said yes to coming on to the podcast. Finally, we have known each other for several years now through the Alliance of International Aromatherapists. And anytime you're in a room, I always want to hear what you have to say. So I'm very excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. That's a very sweet compliment. Or you just want to hear me laugh. I don't know. It could be that too.
It could be that too, but I don't know. I feel like there's some people that just talk for the sake of talking, and then there's other people that talk because they have something to say. And I feel like you're in that latter category, that when you speak, it's because you've taken the time to think about something and then speak on it.
Well, those are my good moments. Those are definitely my good moments. Those are absolutely my good moments, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Excellent. So the first thing I always love to hear from my guests is just like, how in the world did you end up here? And I know that you are in school again, learning even more and kind of not necessarily going in a different direction, but adding a new modality. And I would love to hear your journey, how you ended up where you are.
Okay. So if we just take this from kind of the aromatherapy perspective, we'll start there. You know, my mother one time shared with me a story, you know, how your parents share stories with you about yourself. And she said to me, you know, you would say things and I thought you were misspeaking and I just found them funny. So I didn't correct them. But I looked at somebody who walked into a room and I said, they smell mad. And she said, you know, I didn't know you the way I know you now, you know, kind of thing. And I really actually think you could smell emotion. Like, I think that was really a true statement. She goes, but I didn't know how to foster it. I didn't know. So there were these things in my life that would happen. I was, you know, very attracted to flowers, you know, all that stuff. I would talk about things I couldn't stand the smell of, you know, even as kind of a young child, which doesn't seem like an abnormal thing. But as I went into nursing, I believe, the third generation. Both my grandparents were nurses. My mother was a nurse. Many of my aunts are nurses. And then I went into nursing, and in the 1990s, early 1990s, was a brand new graduate. And I worked with this nurse who was very into Melaleuca products. And she said, she just would tell me all about this. And so I started working with those products. But didn't really understand like aromatherapy, didn't have like an understanding about that, just knew that I kind of enjoyed the things that she put out into the world. I was very curious about integrative practices. Like I wouldn't have called it that back then, but those are the words I have now. And when I was, you know, just a new nurse practitioner, so fast forward several years, I had a person who looked at me and said, you know, you are an allopathic medicine. You're not a homeopath. You're not a nutritionist. You really need to stop all this conversation about this stuff because you're going to get sued. So I put down all those tools for years. But, you know, I would keep them in my own life, but I just didn't discuss them with other people. And it was working in a pain center is where I was working at the time. And the supervisor said to me, you know, you really like essential oils. Would you like to do a talk about them? And I said, no, I don't know anything. You should probably talk to Jody Gaglin. But that didn't go anywhere. And I ended up doing this talk. As I was doing this talk, I realized I really wanted more education. And in preparation of this talk, I looked for folks who were kind of setting quality standards, and I found NAHA and AIA. So it was there that I figured out, okay, I can select a school. And so I went for a school that would work with a professional's schedule, but were endorsed by both organizations.
Mm.
And that was Aromahead. And so I feel like Aromahead is really where I got a solid footing and foundation in aromatherapy. So that's kind of how my journey started.
Very cool. You did mention something that kind of made me go, oh, and that's unfortunately, it's still that way in a lot of hospital settings, like don't talk about that. Don't bring that in here. And I'm thinking specifically from a military medicine perspective, because
Sure.
we're veteran. My husband and I are both veterans. And that's just not something that they talk about in military medicine. And it's, you're kind of shunned for talking about
Yeah,
anything
well,
integrative.
I think it's because it doesn't have the strength of the kind of research clinical trial, double blind, placebo control, kind of these really important ways that we look for authentic effect
Right.
and potential problems. And of course, my other area that I'm very interested in is cannabis. And so that is like also in this situation where there's been a lot of struggle with studies. Not that there aren't studies out there, just like there are studies out there about aromatherapy. And I suspect that with plants as they are today, we are going to see a lot more focus on real world data, which is what a lot of people are talking about now. That's kind of a way where we're gathering data from people. I mean, it's going to have some bias. All research has some bias, but it's kind of a curious area, and
Right.
and AI is also coming into that, I think, a little bit too, to try and maybe make connections that we aren't making quite as quickly. And so we'll see what happens there. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I get it. I mean, that's why I stopped participating because I recognized, yeah, I am allopathic, and these are concerns and considerations, and I certainly don't want to harm somebody, and I wouldn't want, there are those kind of, I mean, I don't think anything I was doing was going to be terribly harmful. I just was a little bit like, oh, glucosamine could have your joints. Now it's okay because there's trials. So, I mean, like there's just different things like that were going on that we just didn't have the data back then to support.
Right. And but isn't that one of the things that's very interesting about aromatherapy research is it is almost impossible to do a double blind because the people that are not getting an aroma know that they're not getting an
An aroma.
aroma.
Yeah, I mean, they say that certainly adds a dimension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so then you would wonder if we used a synthetic placebo or a synthetic and then a non-arm, if you would see something different, because in one way you would only get chemistry that is a specific chemical, and in another way you're going to get whatever that plant has to
Yes.
offer, the
Mhm.
full kind of complement, and then if you added in a group who didn't get anything, you would find out about deep breathing. So there'd be that.
Right.
I feel like we know about deep breathing. I feel like we know that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Well, that's been researched. There's research about it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So you did mention that you are working with cannabis now. You want to talk a little bit about the education part of that?
Sure. So I did not go into cannabis gently. I will put it that way. I was working in a pain clinic. It was 2014. Minnesota had said that they passed legislation for medical cannabis. And in the same year, Trump declared the opiate epidemic. So I want you to think about that, all those forces coming together at once.
Sure.
And there was things happening in the community, and we were getting this kind of drastic influx of patients, and a lot of providers got nervous and were worried, and there were a lot of things that were just happening that were a little bit panicky. We'll put it that way. They were a little bit panicky. And I remember looking at people and saying, I cannot take on all this stuff going on with Schedule 2s and introduce a Schedule 1 into my practice. I do not know anything about this drug. So I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel confident. I can't just ignore it. It's clearly in my world. And I pursued any education I could find, anywhere I could find it. And I swore I went to classes where I was pretty sure I was going to burn in hell because I'd heard the word marijuana. I went to places where I thought everybody was going to light up a joint in the audience, where I was very uncomfortable. I ended up taking a class from Colleen Quinn that was about blending with CBD. And that was the first time I really encountered like recreational cannabis terms, and it made me very uncomfortable. So it was a good thing it was online. It was at my own pace because I would need to pant and panic on my own. And then I'd be like, knowledge is okay. Knowledge is okay. And from there, I really started listening to her podcast when she had that going. I ended up hearing two people interviewed that were crucial, and pursued a certificate in medical cannabis through Pacific College. I felt like that really informed my practice. I was much more confident. I felt like my, when I was working with cannabis with patients, I just was having better, more complete, richer conversations, and was really warding off real like pending problems. So it was very supportive. That college decided to create a master's program. And so I am part of the first cohort of that master's program, and we will be done in April of 2024.
Wow.
Coming right up, yes. And I have really appreciated the faculty. I have appreciated the efforts they've made, the commitment they've made, the education. So I really am very grateful for this whole experience. And my cohort of classmates is amazing. They are amazing people. They are caring people. They are insightful people. They are clearly people who can be a little rebellious, but I have definitely appreciated the cohort as well. It's probably the most intimate cohort of people I have ever gone to school with.
So would you say you're on that rebellious scale as well?
Me? No. No, I just prefer to be an early adopter of change and to be fully engaged and understanding of what's happening rather than have something come at me and have me be very uncomfortable and unsettled. I don't know that I would call myself rebellious as much as I get what medical professionals are going through right now. If you haven't had any of this education or training, and you're like, why is this my responsibility, this medical
Mhm.
business? Like, where did this even come from? I mean, I really get that whole piece. And so I want to be very present for medical professionals. I say things like patients are on the Audubon
Mm.
and professionals are at the gas station with an empty tank, right? We just have not been fully informed. And I wouldn't say everybody, but in a way where many of us feel confident. Like I felt so incompetent when I was talking about the 2014. I was terrified. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to cause any problems. I didn't know what was I recommending? I mean, there were these, what was I saying yes to? Like there was these things in my life. How do I even judge if this is working or not working? Like how do you make these decisions, right? What is a side effect? What would that even look like? What am I supposed to, like all these questions that you would have. So I say to people, I just want to get people a little gas in the tank so they can get on the on-ramp and go. And they'll be pacing the Audubon, and maybe they'll be kind of slowing things down when they need to be slowed down. Maybe they'll just let some stuff go that needs to be let go. But there's that whole idea of empowering the professional and
So
giving them.
that's going to be your niche then, is working with the professionals and helping them understand.
That's what I would really like to do. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Is to really be supportive of professionals. I will say this, I have a lot of people are like, you are coming back to clinical practice. And I'm and I'm like, Well, differently maybe. So it's one of those kinds of things. So I might do a little clinical practice. I think I would want to have it, dedicated within that space of,
Yeah.
how are we bringing cannabis medicine into this particular setting? Um, but I really feel like I want to support professionals because, truth be told, I could, you see 18 patients a day, right? Like that's only 18 patients. Now multiply that by 5 professionals. You have a lot more impact, right?
Right.
And and I think you have different impact because if people aren't feeling scared about a conversation, they're also bonding with patients in a different way. And so now you're creating a different atmosphere for everybody involved. Everybody is in a safe space.
So as far as your aromatherapy practice goes, like,
Yes.
are you still seeing clients in that capacity?
So usually the way aromatherapy has worked out for me is I incorporate it into office visits. That's my best statement. So it's not something I do specifically, but it's something that I recognize that plants would be good in this atmosphere. Sometimes you have tough conversations with people. And so I often in my lab coat had an aromatherapy inhaler just so I could kind of pull it out and give it to somebody because I felt like that could serve a purpose.
Mhm.
Sometimes people are just in the middle of a moment and there's a lot of chest breathing happening, and you're like, tell me what you smell. How deep can you smell that? Where does that go to? What does it remind you of? Do you have any emotions about it? And so
That
I would,
redirect is so powerful.
yeah. Well, because the other thing is that when you're so panicked or you're stressed or in a stressed environment, like your vision gets very narrow. You can't really think. You can't communicate with me the things you need to communicate with me. Because an office visit's a crazy weird environment, right? Somebody ushers you in and ushers you out, and there's computers involved and white coats and bright lights. I mean, it's a weird spot.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of like, how do you create things so that they can just be more manageable and you can get more done and people feel confident with what happens by the end of the visit. Like it's that kind of a thing. But I did find that that was supportive. And I had a number of patients who were very excited and interested in aromatherapy. And so I often, I think Aroma Trust has a dilution calculator. I often gave people the dilution calculator, and we talked about, you know, unfortunately, if you put a straight oil on your skin, it volatilizes. You're not always getting all the benefits out of it that you might want to get. And so, just blending and how we would blend and, just
Mhm.
kind of continue to get more benefit and for a longer period of time. It's so powerful. It's such a powerful tool. You don't need to, I almost feel like, I mean, I'm not saying that they can't do other things, but I almost feel like you don't need much else. Like you really can get a lot done using inhalation forms. And nobody would pause if I said, do you think cannabis works through inhalation? Like nobody would have a question about it. Nobody would have a question about it if I said, do you think cigarettes work through inhalation? I mean, like so many things work through inhalation. I didn't say all of them
Mhm.
were perfect. I just said many things work through inhalation. And so if we recognize that really powerful experience, and then the power of breathing,
Mhm.
the power of breathing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
even if you don't bring aromatherapy in, just taking
Right.
those breaths are so
Mhm,
huge.
mhm, mhm.
Very cool.
Absolutely. So,
Well, how have you seen, aromatherapy work? Whether for yourself, somebody
mm.
that you love, a client, like, what is it what like, what is it that keeps you coming back? Right? Because if it doesn't work, we're gonna walk away, right?
Oh, I love my nose. So, I love my sense of smell. I do. I love that sucker. So I think some of it is that, I could do things like just walk someplace and experience the aroma. Like that would so for me, there's this complete attachment to the aromas of a situation, whether it's baking, whether I walk into, somebody's house or I walk out into a forest or there's a whole thing about aroma. And I think aroma has a tendency to relax me in particular. I find that it will allow me to just pause. Ar- So I think aromatherapy engages my own pause, which is not really a strong suit. So
Mm.
it's a good I have it. All right. But the other thing is, even in that pause, like Jody has a blend called Lucid Mind. I love that blend. I have used that blend to power through so many exhausting days. I can't even. So I, have definitely, so this is just about me. So I have definitely used that to power through work days when I was like, oh my gosh, it's 2 o'clock. I'm going till 5. Because I would definitely use that and inhale it. And within 10 or 15 minutes, I would feel the pickup and be ready to go. And I was focused and concentrating and that whole thing. But in my personal life, I've used things for like little infections, or I've used things for like, oh, I spent too much time in the sun. So I've definitely used it for different reasons. My husband has a thing that I make that he's like, do you have magic juice around? He refers it to it as, I think I had it as owie. It was like owie helper. And he's like, where's magic juice? I had a family member who just went through a really tough time. And, I'm in Minnesota. So not only did we have the pandemic, we had the George Floyd, and how upsetting and distressing the whole atmosphere was. So I made her like one of my favorite blends. And I just remember thinking to myself, I just want to wrap around her heart. She didn't ask me for it. It was none of those things, but I just recognized the strain that she was experiencing. And so, there are times like that when you just do that in your own life for people.
One of the things that I love about aromatherapy is it is a cause for connection. I don't know if it helped her. I just knew I needed to give it to her, and that's connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a cause for connection, not just a connection with what's in the bottle, but a connection between the
Right.
the the, the person who gives and the receiver. And that's
Right.
just, I don't know. I just think that's one of the
Plants.
most amazing things about aromatherapy.
Well, I was going to say plants too. Plants are like that, right? Plants connect us with other people. We give people flowers. We give people like plants are just a beautiful thing.
Well, I
Yeah.
talk about it all the time. The plants were on this planet before humans were. Whether you believe in creation or evolution is irrelevant. The plants were here first, right?
Right. They were here. They were
So
here.
there was a reason that they were here before we were, because we were going to need them.
People will talk about, a family member who always mowed the grass. It's a plant experience. So there's just these ways that we engage with our natural environment that are so important. The crunch of the leaves, but if you're crunching, you're smelling, unless you don't smell. But it's nice to know you can enjoy nature through the crunch of walking on the leaves, even if you didn't have a sense of smell, or the texture of like kind of that bogginess, that you get with moss, just these
Mm,
other ways, or the coolness even on your skin. So yeah, there's lots of ways to enjoy the plant communities. Yeah.
absolutely. So what are some of your other passions?
Mm, um, uh, so I garden, right? There's that. And
Okay, we're back to the plants.
okay, we're back to I garden. And I love to watch what my garden does every year, right? It just does some kind of fun things. My husband and I, grow a number of aromatics that we then distill, and we
Ooh.
distill for hydrosol. So it's something we both enjoy. Like I love the kind of being in the plants and playing with them and talking to them, that kind of a thing. Now, don't get me wrong, my husband likes plants. He has a master's in agriculture. But I think I'm the one who does a little bit more of that. What are you guys doing? Who's hanging out with you? Who are you, little pollinator? Like those kinds of things. I rarely have, like, are you weeding? I think I'm discovering where the plants grow. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I just want to see how this goes differently without you here. But you could probably hang out elsewhere, Mr. Weed or Mrs. Weed, however that goes. So that would probably be an area that I really enjoy. I don't find a lot of people know about hydrosols. And I'm like currently on this like little quest to encourage hydrosol exploration, because you can blend hydrosols. I have I have 4 right now that I've been working with. Lavender, of course, because lavender lives in my life and is a very excited, like, kid in the classroom with all the answers. Like, who's good for hot burn skin from being sun kissed? Oh, me. Okay, well, who's good for like a little ouchie? Oh, me. Right? You have this kid in
Yeah.
the classroom. And then I have yarrow, and yarrow is exactly opposite. It really just chooses when it
Mhm.
wants to engage, and but it wants to be in the harshest environments you can come up with, right? Like it grows in cracks in rock.
That makes so much sense with you when you think about the things that we use yarrow for.
Right.
Yes, that makes
Right.
so much sense.
It's so interesting. So it just and so it's a little bit selective. Like it doesn't want to just be there for everything. Like it wants to be there for the hard times.
Right, because I
Um,
use yarrow in a shingles blend,
oh,
because I have chronic shingles. It just crops,
oh,
it just goes, "Hi, I'm here," every now and
oh,
yarrow is my friend because we use it for the difficult things, and shingles
yes.
is a difficult thing.
Jingles is a difficult thing, but it's also kind of that cracky crevicey kind of thing. I
Yes,
mean, I
it is.
understand it's
It
right. So
it makes so much sense.
so fascinating. Oh, well, thanks for
So
sharing that. Oh my
fascinating.
gosh. All right. See,
Yeah,
Yarrow keeps telling me stories. That's the
and
other
that
thing about it.
and that's what yes, and that's what our plants do. If we really, like, just
Right.
look at the plant itself, we can know what it's good for. Of course,
We
I'm
can.
very, I want to read it, and I want to see it, and I want
Me
to analyze it, but like
But those
you have
people who are really good at doctrine of signatures, they're
yes,
fascinating, right?
yes,
They're absolutely
yes,
fascinating. And then we
yes.
had so I grow lemongrass to cook with, and I usually put it in
Ooh.
soup, right? But this year lemongrass was like, I am the entire garden. I own the garden. And the parsley was quite happy because it was like really cool underneath all the lemongrass. And so it was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
I'll just keep growing. I won't bolt. It's like, I'll do this whole thing. And so I looked at my husband and I was like, I think we should distill that this year because it seems very excited and it is unapologetically bright. This is
Ugh,
fabulous. It's just so fabulous. They all have a unique thing to offer, right? We all have a unique thing to offer. That is
absolutely.
what makes things beautiful. Yeah. So that's probably my other little like passion.
What is your favorite movement?
I love dance. But right now, I would say that the movement that is bringing me the most connection to myself would be Pilates.
Oh my. Okay.
So I worked with a Pilates instructor for a period of time as a just kind of individual, and then graduated to a group class. And I have really found that to be exceptionally amazing. Like the strength of it, and you don't realize it's happening. And then my other favorite movement would be walking my dog. Oh, I might have to throw in there swimming with my aunt. Okay. All right. So I have many favorite movements. I like to move. I think movement is really good. Like human
Move.
bodies are made to move.
Whom the human body was created to move.
Correct.
Exactly.
So, and
Exactly.
I think movement like should be joyful. So I don't think we have to do things that don't make us happy. Like I've definitely worked with a lot of patients who are like, I have a treadmill, but I hate the thing. And I'm like, why are we dealing with that thing? Couldn't
Yeah.
we walk elsewhere? Like, do you
Yeah.
like window shop? Could we walk in window shop in the morning in the mall, like before the shops open? So we're not spending inappropriate amounts of money.
So the mission of the podcast is to connect you with people, connect people with you. Because your niche is a little bit different, you're going to be looking to work with professionals in the cannabis arena.
Mhm.
Like, who is it that you would want to contact you? And then how would they get in touch with you?
So I think the people who I would be the best for are people who are interested in cannabis. They want to understand what is the endocannabinoid system, what is the endocannabinoidome, what are the problems? Like how do I have a conversation with my patient when I've got 10 to 15 minutes for an office visit? What do I even document? Like how do I just do this? I think that's the group who I feel the most driven to support is the people who are just feeling like, I don't even know what to do with this,
Mhm.
but my patients are using it. And I really feel the need to understand it better. And I don't think that I am the person, I didn't learn math out of one book. Nobody's going to learn everything from me. So I definitely could see myself looking at people and being like, okay, I've given you this, and this would be the next step when you're ready.
Mhm.
Or maybe they reach back out when they're ready. So I feel like that's my group is people who are deeply compassionate for their patients and are really just needing a little compassion to come to them.
Excellent. And how would they get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. So,
Okay.
I think people could certainly reach out through LinkedIn. I think if anybody was listening to this podcast, if they could add in, I heard you, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And, just so I have a clue as to where things are coming at me. And then the other thing would be my email address, which is plantamplifiedwellness@gmail.com. And again, if you could just make sure that you let me know what this was about, that would be helpful. Yeah,
Right. Well, and I think it's great that you're on LinkedIn because that is business to business.
correct,
And that's what you're looking to do is professional to
correct,
professional. So that's
correct.
perfect place for people to get in touch with you. Excellent.
Yeah.
So what are you working on right now that you're really excited about?
One of the things that I have been, so I will just go into this week. So one of the things that I have taken on for some reason is nausea and vomiting, and cannabis in high doses in maybe genetically susceptible people over a period of time can result in people experiencing cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. That's a syndrome where they will actually experience nausea and vomiting associated with the cannabis. And the only treatment we have right now is to discontinue cannabis, which is
Right.
very counterintuitive, right? Because a lot of people use cannabis to manage nausea and vomiting. And so right now I'm focused on, when do you use cannabis for nausea and vomiting? So that has been my curiosity, and I have been reading a lot about cancer in particular, and chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting, and really kind of the challenges oncology faces and the patients who are living with that.
As we come down to the end of our time, I just always like to hand the floor back over to the guest. If there's anything at all that you want to share with the listeners, or if you feel like I forgot something, now would be a great time to share
You
that.
have forgotten nothing. I would say, when it comes to plants, I would just encourage people to be considering of kind of what their choices are, what their selections are. I think both aromatherapy and cannabis have a place in many people's lives, not all people's lives. And certainly being compassionate with one another, whether it is a professional with a patient or a patient with a professional, because this isn't stuff that's really out there. It's not really taught, and people are trying to catch up. So if we are just compassionate with one another, I think that's really the place to be. It's been tough few years for a lot of people. So I would like to see that happen.
Well, Jacqueline, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I'm so excited just for the listeners to hear everything that you're doing. And just thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Oh, it was good to see you, Melissa.
Thank you.
What is compassion? You know, sometimes I hear or read a word and think I understand what it means, and I just go on about my day. Other times I hear a word and it stops me in my tracks as I wonder, am I really aware of its full meaning? Hearing Jacqueline's plea for compassion created a curiosity in me, and I had to follow the trail. Compassion literally means to suffer together. It is a feeling that arises when someone is suffering and you feel motivated to relieve that suffering. You can have compassion for your family, your friends, and even strangers. When you see someone suffering and you feel the urge to help them, that's compassion. When you choose to speak with kindness, that's compassion. When you listen without judgment, compassion. When you forgive someone or offer to help them. When you accept someone with all of their differences. When you're patient or you show gratitude. Compassion comes in so many forms, but the common denominator is suffering together. Taking time to walk in the other person's shoes, put on their worldview glasses, and try to understand. And then be moved to take action for their benefit. Compassion has the power to change not only the life of the person to whom you're showing it, but yourself also. I challenge you to pursue compassion today and every day.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Jacqueline Higgins. I will put all of the links mentioned in today's episode into the show notes. Aromatic Chat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching, and I'm your host, Melissa, Master Transformational Coach, Registered Aromatherapist, and Certified Emotion Code Practitioner. I invite you to connect with me on the web at lemonbalmcoaching.com and Instagram at lemonbalmcoaching. I'll see you next time with our next episode. Until then, peace, love, and aromatics.